Hi everyone, today on the channel I'm going to show you an easy system to build to take the hardtop off your Wrangler. There's a couple of things you have to buy, but compared to some other systems I've seen, fairly inexpensive. And as we go through it, you'll have the option to build it out of steel, or you can build it out of wood. It's entirely up to you. It just depends what tools you have available to you. Alright, so with that, let's dive in. Alright, today we're going to build a little lift to take the top off the Jeep. Probably gonna be a little overboard, but that's okay. So we found this electric hoist at Harbor Freight. It wasn't too bad, a little bit under $100. Some unistrut from Lowe's to go across the beams. Now you could use wood as well, but we have some square tubing here. We're gonna use a little bit of that, and we're gonna suspend this from the ceiling. It's all gonna be up in the attic. Nice thing about the electric hoist, we'll be able to just raise and lower as needed. Alright, so let's get this project going. Okay, to get this between the rafters, a typical rafter is only 3.5 inches, 2x4. So it's at least two rafter thicknesses thick, which is 7 inches. So what we do is we're going to make a little support out of two 2x4s we have laying around here. We're going to make a little T out of them. So those will span the joist, and then the piece of unistrut will go between those. And we're going to span several joists, that way the little bit of weight that the top actually is, I think it's around 150 pounds, maybe 200, it's shared across the whole ceiling versus one or two. And then hoist will mount right there. This way we're going to span 1, 2, 3, 4 rafters. Now, with looking at this hoist, there's two ratings for it. It's just like when you winch. There's a single line pull, if you will, and a double line pull. So if I loop it back up to itself, well, it'll lift slower, just like your winch. Alright, so one thing about these hoists, it's just like when you use a winch. Single line pull, or single line capacity, is 220 pounds. If you loop it back in on itself, like to show it here, you can lift 440 pounds. It'll lift slower, but we don't really care about the speed. So we'll loop it back up on itself for just a little added safety factor. And we'll get the unistrut bolted to the top of it. And then figure out where we're going to poke the hole in the ceiling for the cable and for the controller. Alright, so we're going to take the cover off of this. There's a micro switch here that we have to unplug. What I always suggest to do is, before you take anything apart, take a quick picture of it. The reason why we're going to take it apart is I'm not going to cut a hole big enough to jam this controller through. We'll put a couple small holes to pass the cables through, and that's it, and we'll rewire that back up in the attic. So how the switch works is, as this comes up and bumps this, it trips the switch. So what happens, as this winds, it'll finally pull down on this and shut off. See, as it got tension, hit the switch. So that's the purpose of the micro switch. Okay, so we're going to hook this in. Remember, we've got it rained down below us. I'm going to try to get this centered best I can. Okay, so we just put a screw with a washer on it in there just to hold it. That'll hold it to the beam. Remember, it's just hanging. You're just trying to keep it in position. Just down. Here she comes. When it goes up, this will hit the plunger and it'll kick it off. We'll probably end up changing the hook out, something a little lower profile. Now we just need to build a cradle for the roof, and that's it. Alright, so it looks like I need 30-inch span between the two, and we'll just run between there and we'll run a line. Alright, square this thing up. Basically, the easiest way to square up parts is you measure across the corners. So here we're about 69 3/16. And here we're 69 and pretty much 3/16. So I got this side clamped, and I just have a clamp in this side, and I'm just drawing it back a little bit just to dial it in. We'll get this welded in, and I'll put the centerpiece in. Alright, so the ring is actually zinc coated, so we're going to get that off before we actually... Alright, so we had to put some longer standoffs on it. The hoist needed a little bit more room than what I thought it did. So I put some feet on it to hit the ceiling. I've got some plastic caps coming in So those will go on top of those tubes. And that way when I pull it up, they don't just go right through the ceiling. So there I just added a coupler, got rid of the hook altogether. So it's through the ring onto the wire. Remember, you're not going up and down a lot. It's just hanging off the wire. So that was putting in a very simple hoist system in your attic to lift the hardtop off your Wrangler. And it really doesn't matter if it's a JL, JK. I'd imagine you could do it JT, TJ. It's a hardtop. You might have to change the spacing a little bit for how wide it is. Other than that, that's about it. That rack, you could make it out of wood just as easy. I had steel and the ability to weld it. But it really is up to you. You can go either way you want to. Just a couple of the key points here, that on these straps here, don't squeeze it tight. Make it so that the window will still open. You don't want to collapse the sides. It's really just hanging off of those straps. And I've got two straps in the back, and there's two straps in the top here. That way if I want to put the top back on, just back in, lower it back down, put the bolts in. Right? So if you want to learn how to do some welding and stuff like that to build that rack, I'll put a link down here for that. And if you want to know how to take the top off and put your soft top on, I'll put a link up here as well. So I'll see you on either one of those two videos. So until then, this is Jeepingmo. Thanks for viewing.